you forever. Come hell or high water. Se om jag kan put this camera. What's up, guys? My name's Jonas, and well, basically, sorry. Now maybe you can hear me better. Well, what's up? I thought, what better time to make a book review of Power versus Force than when I'm actually in my car on my way back to the northern Sweden, Umeå. So, yeah, I got introduced to David Hawkings several years ago, actually, and I bought the book Power versus Force. Excuse me. I think maybe two years ago. But I finished reading the book about a month ago, and I've since then really got into David Hawkins stuff and his wisdom, his way, spirituality basically, and the letting go technique was the thing that dragged me into it from the beginning. So now currently I'm reading Healing and Recovery, and I also recommend that book. But anyways, review. I'm gonna say Power versus Force was an incredible book in a way. I got into David Hawkins because of the letting go technique, and that's the thing that's, you know, practically helped me the most in my life. I've had quite an intense year with a breakup and a few other things. A really life crisis this year. It's been a couple in 1 year. Big life crises. So the book Power versus Force, from my perspective, really got me into the chart of consciousness, and how basically Hawkins explains, you know, the different levels, how you can be at a different level. And funny thing, he talks about a way that you can calibrate what level of consciousness you're in. And to make it simple, it goes from 0 to 1,000, and most people, the average on the planet is about 207 at the moment, if you average all the levels. So 1,000 would be Jesus and Buddha, and about, you know, 70 or 90 would be Hitler. So that would give you a span, you know. And then there's also a level below 0, which is, you know, hell. But anyways, so what I got out of Power versus Force was being introduced to this idea of a scale. So before I actually was reading the book, I kind of tried to calibrate my level of consciousness, and it was around 206. It's easier if you have, as you're listening to this review, if you Google the chart of the Hawking scale or scale of consciousness. But I was around 200. But actually, after reading Power versus Force and practicing the letting go techniques for about 3-4 months now, more actually, about 6 months, but it was about 5 months in, I actually met up with a person quite crazy. I went to Espresso House, which is the equivalent of... I went to church one day, and then I went to Espresso House to read the final chapters of Power versus Force, and it's so insane. I asked the girl sitting at a table, hey, can I sit here? And I sit down to read the book, and she shows me the exact same book, Power versus Force. It's not like this book is a mainstream book, and that really showed me like my evolution of consciousness through practicing the technique, through doing what Hawkins talks about, you know, talks about 12-step meetings and going to church and aligning yourself with a higher consciousness, which is, you know, I guess what he's trying to inspire everyone to do through his material. It showed me that I'm on the right path. And when I met that girl, I wanted to calibrate my own consciousness level, and we calibrated myself at 260, which was quite interesting. And no, 250 or 260. David says that by reading his book, your level of consciousness, I think Power versus Force, he said that your level of consciousness would raise 20 or 25 points. Someone can correct me on this. So quite amazing actually, and I really felt that my perspective. I went home for Christmas now and talked to my parents and met my parents, and since I really have become a real student, a dedicated student, I would say of his craft, I've changed as a person for the absolute better. I think that most people in life, when I talk to my dad, for example, he's almost 60 now, and he's still caught in ego and judgmentalism, and I still have that left in me as well. But I think that the reason I have been able to increase has been life crisis and very intense negative things that have happened in my life. And I think it's very interesting, because when I first was introduced to David and the Power versus Force, and the book has been laying there in the bookshelf for years, I was not attracted to it. I think I was not open to the idea of spiritual evolution, and it's really when you're put into a corner where as David talks about in Power versus Force about the 12-step groups, how very interesting whether you're spiritual or not, but people when they came up with the 12-step program, it was because people who were alcoholics, and they could Carl Jung and another guy, Thomas I think his name was, the guy who invented the 12-step groups, they found that alcoholism was such a hard thing to kick, to stop with, that they eventually, the guy who invented it by instructions from Carl Jung, he said, try surrendering yourself to the Lord, to Jesus Christ, to God, to the universe, to accept and tell yourself that I'm powerless over this, right? And I can really relate to this. I am not a spiritual person by nature, like from the beginning, or like a religious person. I think that Power versus Force is a book that will relate to people that are in a deep spiritual crisis, unfortunately, and not so much to people that are not. David Hawkings' content is really quite profound. It's very honest, it's very direct, and what is so great with Power versus Force, it shows you a way out of your current situation that is the real solution. I find that a lot of times when we're met with a life crisis of some sort, having to lose weight, having to divorce, a death in the family, there's a lot of advice out there, but it's all on the surface level. What I would summarize Power versus Force is, it's almost like a Bible or content that is real, that is pointing to the truth. It's very integrous with it doesn't seek anything. You don't need to the book or his teachings, they don't try to get you to become part of a cult or anything. It's like, whether you're religious or not, we can say something that is I'll give you an example. David Hawkins also say a real spiritual truth, or something that's really truthful, doesn't seek anything for gain. Like, treat others how you yourself would like to be treated is something that Jesus said, right? It's from the Bible, it's from Christianity. Whether you're Christian or not, spiritual or not, the statement is very true, right? It's a very honest, direct, integrous statement. You can be an atheist, and I think that even if you're an atheist, you would respect that statement. So Power versus Force is an absolute read. I myself personally really love his, the more practicality, the more practical stuff. It's more like a foundation of getting introduced on spirituality on the basis of real spirituality, of how it's the truth of it, if you're heading in the right direction or the wrong direction. Or that's what I see Power versus Force as a manual to basically, like this car I'm driving right now, as a manual of where are the things, where are the parts. It doesn't really explain, how to fix the car. If I pull out the manual, it's basically like a manual, for yourself as a spiritual human being. So I would say begin with the book like Power versus Force, or maybe actually not begin with it, but begin with a book like Healing, Recovery, or Letting Go, because you're probably gonna resonate with that more. You maybe, if you want to have direct help. I read Power vs. Force as the first book, and I kind of found it a little bit boring because I couldn't relate to it. If I would read it now, after I started reading Healing, Recovery, and Letting Go in these books, I'd find it more interesting. So a manual for your spiritual evolution. I think it's very a book like Power vs. Force is really, really, really important at the moment, because if you look at YouTube, where I guess most people find their spirituality and stuff, there's a lot of gurus out there that are claiming to be, giving you the right advice and so on. But a lot of them, it's hard to differentiate which one to listen to, which one to not listen to. Some spiritual teachers that I have in mind doesn't seem too integrous. I work in sales myself, and I can tell like their message is very seductive, but it's more seductive than David Hawkings' small teachers, talk sometimes, on YouTube, that he doesn't have a lot of viewers and stuff, but his message doesn't need anything backed. What I think is David Hawkins is probably one of the absolute highest beings on, that taught spirituality. That's why I think it's such a great foundation. I'm part of the Hawkins group, etc., on YouTube and on Facebook. And the people in there, you can really tell that they have nothing. These are people that they don't try to silence you. When I first got into the group, I was kind of thinking like maybe they will, if I make wrong, post on their Facebook wall, maybe they will like shut me down like that because I'm not integrous with their, or I'm not part of the cult or something. That's kind of what I was thinking first, but I noticed that they're very open-minded. They have humor. They don't take things too seriously, and I think that's a really big part of spirituality. So I'm making a review of the book Power vs. Force, but I would really say get introduced to David Hawkins stuff. I think check out his stuff. I know there's a lot of other good guys as well, but I think that is one of the best teachers you can find on this topic. And if you're in a deep spiritual crisis right now, I can say from my own personal opinion, my life has, the last 6 months, my life has changed in a profound way. Before I saw things more linearly, which is also something you can read about in Power vs. Force, but I saw my life very linearly, and now I see things, instead of seeing them just like that, like, now my life is bad, I go to the gym, I fix it. It's more like I see the depth of it and the sacredness of life. It's really giving me meaning beyond anything I can explain. I've struggled with depression in big parts of my life, but my depression is almost gone completely. I've never seen myself so happy, so smiling, so cheerful. And I've tried a lot of things, and this is honestly the only thing that's really helped me. Have an awesome day, guys. God bless you all. I only make these videos because I really want to share this, and if one person can watch this video and start getting into David Hawkins type of stuff, I would be so profoundly happy, joyful. So have an awesome day. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and have a great New Year. Bye.